A little bit more of a laid-back episode today. Going to take a look at some MLB player rankings, talk about sweet Lou Whitaker's Hall of Fame case, and, of course, a couple other minor free agency updates. All today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Friday, January 24th, 2025. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's FanDuel.com to get started. Hope everyone had a fantastic week. Gonna take a nice little step back today. Have a nice, more laid back episode. We've been talking just ad nauseum about free agency updates and free agency updates and free agency updates and who are the Tigers going to sign. And we're retreading conversations. And I really want to avoid that as much as possible. So we're going to have a little bit more of a fun episode today. We will talk about Lou Whitaker, who is going to be back on the New Era Committee 2026 Hall of Fame ballot. We'll end the show with that conversation. We will have a couple of minor free agency updates in terms of the Tigers and where they stand. But a bulk of the show is going to be taking a look at MLB Network's top 10 players at each position. Now, they still have a few positions left. They have not released their corner outfield or DH, I believe. But pretty much everything else is covered. Starting pitcher, reliever, both separate, and then the rest of the positions on the field. So the reason why I'm doing this now as opposed to waiting until all 9 are done is for a couple of reasons. Or all 11, I guess, starting pitcher and relief pitcher, are done. And DH, however many that ends up being. Math is hard. But it is because I think that the positions they have released are interesting conversations from the Tigers' perspective, players that are or aren't on some of these lists. I think that will induce conversation. And because of that, I love to talk too much. There's no way we were going to get through every single position in one episode ever anyway. So we'll do that. We also know, like, for corner outfield, Riley Green's going to be on there. It's just a matter of where he's ranked, right? Like, there's some of those some nuance there, like we can kind of read between the lines and figure out looking ahead. But let's start with shortstop. And for no other reason other than that's the first one they list in MLB.com's article of their rankings. So of the top 10 shortstops, there's a couple of things that jump out at me. One, there's obviously no Detroit Tigers on this list. That should be the most obvious thing you hear all day. More than the sky is blue and the sun came up. Like you're breathing. 2 comes after 1, and there's no Tigers on the top 10 shortstops in baseball list. Facts of life. Okay. Number 1 is Gunnar Henderson, which I understand. The thing that is wild to me is they have Bobby Witt Jr. at 4. Look, I will take any opportunity I can to slander the Kansas City Royals. Okay. Beautiful ballpark, beautiful city, fantastic fans. Genuinely. I have been to Kauffman multiple times. I love going there, even when I'm decked out in Tigers gear. They're very, very kind, good people, right? That doesn't stop the fact that they have absolutely tortured my franchise for my lifetime. Okay, I will not ever stand in the way of Royals slander or of any chance ever to take a jab at the Kansas City Royals. Bobby Witt Jr. as the 4th best shortstop in baseball is absurd. That is one of the wackest takes I've seen, and it's the first position. We're just starting. That's wild. No, it's not to say talent isn't above him. Gunnar Henderson, I think, deserves to be one of the top two. Corey Seager, when healthy, has proven to be one of the best players in all of baseball, was runner-up for MVP in Shohei's last year in the American League. And then Lindor at 3 had an MVP caliber season in 2024. I understand all 3 of those guys being highly ranked. Bobby Witt Jr. just put up like a 10-win season. Like, I don't, and is like barely old enough to drink. Like, I don't know. That just feels like a wild take to me. But I think there's an argument he's won, which pains me to say. I tried to hate on him when he was in the minor leagues, and the second that he was drafted to the Royals, like I tried to be a hater. It obviously didn't work out. He seems like a really cool dude. He's a great baseball player. Number 4 is wild. Mookie Betts at number 5 at shortstop. Also wild to me. Dansby Swanson, Carlos Correa, Ellie De La Cruz, Willie Adames, and Trey Turner. Don't really have too much of an issue with any of the rest of these. I would love to see Ellie De La Cruz take a huge step forward this year. I think that he has all of the tools to be one of the most dynamic, really, I'll just say, players in baseball. And I hope that he is able to do that and reach that ceiling. Obviously, Carlos Correa, another AL Central foe here at number 7. He was number 7 last year too, on these same set of rankings. He needs to stay healthy, and at some point, that is, I don't know. At some point, I feel like that has to be a knock against him in these lists and in these rankings. Not to say he doesn't deserve number 7 or he doesn't deserve to be, a highly ranked player, but needs to stay on the field. Needs to get back to prime Correa for me to be like solidified. Like put him back in top, 5 or 6 conversation. Second baseman is where we see our first Detroit Tiger. Number 1, Ketel Marte. Number 2, Jose Altuve. 3, Marcus Semien. Then we have Brennan Donovan, Jazz Chisholm Jr., Tyler Fitzgerald, shout out, Brandon Lowe, Nico Horner, Andres Jimenez, and number 10 is newest addition to the Detroit Tigers, Gleyber Torres. We'll save Gleyber here for the end. The rest of the list, I love Brendan Donovan. Going from not ranked last year to number 4 is a heck of a jump, but I think it's somewhat fair. Marcus Semien, I think, is one of the most underrated players of legitimately like the last decade. Like that is my take. Like I no one talks about this dude every year. And then every year he puts up like a 4 to 7 win season. Like he's got MVP votes in 2 or 3 different seasons. Like I think he's wildly underappreciated. Altuve not being number 1, I think is just noteworthy in its own right. Just because for so long he was kind of the solidified best second baseman in baseball. And then Ketel Marte is an absolute dog. He's one of my favorite players to watch in the sport. Tyler Fitzgerald, shout out. Huge 2024. Really cool to see him get some recognition on here. We'll see how Jazz Chisholm does for the Yankees in a full season. Gleyber Torres at 10. If this ends up being the case, I think the Tigers will gladly take it. Like if he is a top 10 second baseman in baseball, we as a fan base should be over the moon. We should be absolutely thrilled, and I hope that is the case. It's not going to be because of his defense, though. And that's something we talked about when the Tigers signed him, right? Is like, if he is going to reach his peak value, he is going to have to continue to crush lefties as he really has his whole career and hit better against righties than he did a year ago. Now, he has done that before, right? In his first 3-ish years in the majors, he was much better hitting consistently against right-handed pitching, because he's always hit lefties well. So if he can get back to that, you're talking about a guy that could be, like a 2.5, 3.5 win player, which again, the Tigers would be, and we should all be over the moon about if that happens. But that only does really happen. If you want to get super specific, I would even venture to say that only happens if he hits well against righties. because the defense isn't going to be great, and we know he is going to hit against lefties. So that is going to be my biggest kind of X factor for him in 2025. And if he can produce that, then we're talking about a Tigers infield that actually could be decent. Well, obviously we know what's happening at shortstop, and we have no clue what third base is going to look like as of January 24th. But we'll see. I still think it's a good ad. I know it's not a big flashy ad. I know that everybody wants more. I want more. I come on this show 3 times a week right now, and eventually 5 days a week here and a few weeks from now, and tell you every day that I want them to add more. But that doesn't take away from the potential upside of the ads they have made either. So good for Glaber getting on this list. Was unranked last year, so actually performed well enough to get put on, barely, but still on the list, get recognized. Let's move to third base, where the Tigers obviously have no one because we're not even sure they really have a third baseman right now. We'll talk about that and more right after this. Got to talk to you today about our friends over at Select Quote. In sports, having a winning strategy is everything. It's how the best teams make it to the Super Bowl, the World Series, and the Olympics. The same goes for life. Having a strategy like life insurance from Select Quote can protect your financial legacy and keep your family's future secure. Select Quote makes it easy to find the perfect life insurance policy as one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience. They've helped over 2 million customers and helped find $700 billion in coverage since 1985. What sets Select Quote apart is their personal touch. Unlike other brokers that offer one-size-fits-all policies, their licensed agents tailor coverage to fit your unique needs. If you're in good health, you might even qualify for same-day coverage of up to $5 million with no medical exam required. And it's more affordable than you think. You can get up to $1 million in coverage for as little as $20 a month. So get the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/lockedon. Go to selectquote.com/lockedon today and get started. That's selectquote.com/lockedon. Select Quote, they shop, you save. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2, Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in, as always, making us your first listen every single day. Shots at every dayers that do tune in every day. We will, of course, be back on Monday, recapping the weekend, talking about any news and notes that come out of the weekend. And as we're kind of doing today, starting to take a look at what is to come here in the 2025 campaign. Talking about third base. MLB Network, MLB Now to be specific, is going around and ranking their top 10 players at each position in baseball. We have talked about shortstop and second base. Let's talk third base. Number 1, J-Ram in Cleveland. Number 2, Rafi Devers. Number 3, free agent Alex Bregman. Number 4, Manny Machado. Number 5, Austin Riley. Then you have Matt Chapman, Nolan Arenado, Max Muncy, Isaac Paredes at 9, and Eugenio Suarez at 10. This list is littered with, like, quote-unquote Tigers legends, okay? You have J-Ram, who's one of the biggest Tigers killers in the entire sport, at number 1. Well-deserved. You will not hear me ever slander J-Ram and his baseball talent. I will slander the fact that he kills my baseball team, and part of me hates him for it, but seems like an awesome dude. And again, I genuinely have believed for a few years now that he is the best third baseman on the planet. Rafi Devers, also fantastic, one of the best pure hitters in baseball. We'll see if he plays a full season at third base this year. There's some rumors kind of mulling around there. Alex Bregman at 3. Obviously, someone the Tigers are in play for. A lot of the fans for the Detroit Tigers are interested in Alex Bregman. If he ends up producing like a top 3 third baseman in baseball this year, obviously he is going to be worth the money that he is being paid. The big question is, how many years are teams willing to commit to that, and how long will he stay in this top 3 to top 5 range among third basemen in baseball? Then you have Matt Chapman at 6, who a lot of Tigers fans wanted. Was that last offseason, 2 off seasons ago, whenever he was a free agent? We had that conversation about 1 million times on here. I was very open about my hesitation towards giving him a long-term deal. He's been great the last 2 years. Obviously was really very good in Oakland as well. Nolan Arenado, number 7, someone that some national writers have said the Tigers have kicked the tires on, at least in terms of a trade. And then you have Isaac Paredes at 9, former Tiger that unfortunately Detroit traded away in the Austin Meadows deal. Austin Meadows barely played for your Detroit Tigers. And then number 10, Eugenio Suarez, who was traded for Alfredo Simon back 10 years, 11 years ago now. Yeah. So as you can see, a lot of former / potential Tigers here at third base, but notably no actual Tigers at third base. This is one of the biggest question marks of your Detroit Tigers in 2025 is just who's going to be the primary third baseman. Is there even going to be a primary third baseman? I think if the season started tomorrow, you're looking at a Vierling, Jace Young platoon. You're looking at Vierling getting a lot of reps against lefties, maybe pinch hitting later in games, and you're seeing Jace Young against righties. I think that is probably the most likely scenario on January 24th. We'll see how the next month or so plays out. Starting pitchers. We talked about this a little bit when it happened because I think it's ridiculous that Tarik Skubal isn't number 1. But it is Zach Wheeler, Tarik Skubal, Chris Sale, Paul Skeens, Blake Snell, Corbin Burns, Cole Reagans, Garrett Cole, Logan Webb, and Framber Valdez. I'd have Garrett Cole higher. First off, I still think he's one of the baddest dudes on the planet. They have him at number 8. Cole Reagans terrifies me. I hate hitting against him. I hate when the Tigers face Reagans. Really sucks that that's in the division. Corbin Burns in Arizona is just wild to get used to. Paul Skeens already at number 4 as a rookie. Crazy impressive because I don't think anybody hears that and is like, no, that's ridiculous. Like he's pitched half a season of Major League Baseball and we're all like, yeah, no, that's tracks. That he actually might be underrated. He maybe is already a top 3 pitcher on the planet. Generational talent, obviously. And like I'm fine with Chris Sale at 3, just won the National League Triple Crown. Zach Wheeler ahead of Tarik Skubal is mind-boggling to me. I said it at the time, I'll say it again. I think Zach Wheeler is one of the most talented pitchers and one of the best pitchers on the planet. I think he is fantastic. I love watching him pitch. I wanted the Tigers to go after him when he was a free agent a few years back. I have no ill will toward the man. I'm a huge fan of his. There is nothing that happened last year that would make you believe that going into the season, any GM in baseball would rather have Zach Wheeler than Tarik Skubal. Okay, case in point. Now we have catchers. The top 10 catchers in baseball. William Contreras at number 1, Adley Rutschman at 2. Then we have Will Smith, Cal Raleigh, JT Realmuto, Yainer Diaz, Gabriel Moreno, Alejandro Kirk, Sean Murphy, and Austin Wells. My favorite position in all of sports, the catcher position. Love William Contreras. No issue with that. I'd probably still have Adley at 1, even though he was kind of a really streaky hitter and didn't hit as well as we expected him to in 2024. Will Smith, one of the best offensive catchers. I hesitate to say ever because I feel like that's just like thrown around too much. But certainly of the last, 10 years, fantastic talent behind the plate there. Cal Raleigh, awesome. One of the best defensive catchers in baseball. JT Realmuto, awesome. One of the Tigers to get him. The biggest question I have is there a world in which Jake Rogers could sneak onto this list? Like Austin Wells is a good catcher, had a good 2024, fine player. Is there a world, though, where Jake Rogers has a more valuable season, just in terms of like WAR, than Austin Wells or than Alejandro Kirk or than maybe Yainer Diaz even? I think that there is a path. I'm not like planting my flag and saying Jake Rogers, top 10 catcher in baseball, book it. But like, I don't think that's actually that far fetched. I think if you expand this list to like top 11 or 12, you probably see his name on it. And the big thing for him, the X factor for him in 2025 is just going to be offense. If he plays the same level of defense he did in 2024 and hits like he did in 2023, you're talking about a guy that not only would be a top 10 catcher in baseball, but might even break that like top 7 or 8 conversation. And that's really exciting to have a player like that. But that's a big if. You can't just assume that he's going to have a 750 OPS. Like he has to actually go out there and prove it. He took a huge step back and really struggled at the plate in 2024. So that is far from a guarantee. I'm not just saying that's going to happen and we're all good. But that is something where if it did happen, I think he would instantly become one of the more valuable catchers in the sport. Relievers. I have a huge gripe with this list. Then we'll talk center field. Then we'll talk Lou Whitaker. We'll do all of that right after this. Got to talk to y'all today about our friends over at FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and a variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. There's no waiting around for your winnings. Whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Third and final segment, Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in, as always. Top 10 relievers on the planet. Devin Williams, number 1 for the second year in a row, which I think is very, very impressive. And honestly, I don't think he should be number 1, but like he's also objectively has some of the nastiest stuff on the planet. I don't know how Emmanuel Clase has the year he did this year and isn't number 1. That just feels wild to me. And maybe that's like interdivision bias. And like Kerry Carpenter is kind of his father, but like, you know what I mean? Like I just, after the season he had, I find it hard to believe that he's not the best reliever on the planet heading into 2025. Devin Williams 1, Cade Smith 2, not even the best reliever on his own team is what they're saying in terms of Class A. Ryan Helsley 3, fantastic year. Emmanuel Clase 4, Mason Miller 5, Edwin Uceda, Tigers legend 6, Tanner Scott 7, Kirby Yates 8, Jeff Hoffman 9, and Rysel Iglesias 10. The thing I want to point out, 2 things. 1, Tyler Holton not being on here is a travesty. All of these guys are talented. All of these guys are some of the best relievers in baseball. I completely get that. Tyler Holton has been a cheat code for 2 years in a row. Okay. If you look at this list, go find the article on MLB.com. You're going to search like MLB Now player rankings, and the MLB.com article will come up. Next to everybody's name, in parentheses, is where they were ranked last year at this time, heading into the 2024 season, right? Every other position, it's like a couple of not ranked guys, but like a lot of them have already been ranked because that's just how, baseball works. Relievers, it's almost all unranked. Devin Williams and Ryan Helsley were 1 and 2 last year. The other 7, 8, whatever math, all were unranked last year. Reliever is a roller coaster. It is so volatile. Like, people can be really good relievers and then fall off a cliff in an instant. And that's just how it works because it's such a consistent small sample size. You get popped once, your ERA doesn't go down until you throw 2 weeks of shutout ball after. So like it is mind-boggling to me that when a pitcher of Tyler Holton's stature, who got an MVP vote in 2024, mind you, okay, is as good as he is for 2 consecutive seasons with the amount of innings he has thrown and doesn't get any recognition, I think is absolutely absurd. It's one of my biggest issues with any of these lists. Center field. Then we'll move on to Sweet Lou here. Number 1, J-Rod, Julio Rodriguez. Number 2, Jackson Merrill. 3, Byron Buxton. 4, Michael Harris. 5, Mike Trout. 6, Brandon Marsh. Then we have Dalton Varsho, Garrett Mitchell, O'Neal Cruz, and Luis Robert Jr. O'Neal Cruz in center field. We're going to see how that works over a full season. Brandon Marsh, love Brandon Marsh. Seeing him kind of rise from where he was on the Angels to where he is now is really cool. This list is just full of people that, like, if they stay healthy, could be one of the best players in all of baseball. Luis Robert Jr., if he stays healthy, could be legitimately one of the best players in the sport. Mike Trout, been saying that for about half a decade now. Now, Michael Harris, for sure. The Braves had a ton of injuries last year. Byron Buxton, the epitome of, if he stays healthy, he's going to be one of the best players in the sport. J-Rod's been relatively healthy, but kind of had an up and down, what was it, 2023? I guess kind of a little bit in the first half of 2024 too. But I think J-Rod deserves it. I'm okay with that ranking. I don't have too much issue with any of these rankings because, like, who knows? Like, any of these dudes could be really good. My take here that I'll leave you with is that if Parker Meadows stays healthy, and if he hits even 70% of what he did post call-up in 2024, will be a top 10 center fielder in terms of WAR in baseball in 2025. I will plant my flag on that one. I believe that. I think he is so talented, and he doesn't need to have an 800, 850 OPS to be one of the most valuable center fielders in baseball. He's so fast and so good defensively that if he's just a league average hitter and approaches like 15 or dare I even say 20 homers with what else he's going to do everywhere outside of the batter's box, he'll be a 3.5+ win player, which should make him in the bottom part of a top 10 center fielder in baseball. Can't wait. Really no free agency updates. I know, like I said, they were small for a reason. There really aren't any. It just looks more and more each day like the Tigers are not going to get Bregman. I would brace for that. I'm bracing for that. I kind of have been for a while. You can go back and watch every episode since November. I've kind of been skeptical that it was ever legitimately going to happen anyway, but it really does look like those talks are getting slower and slower and getting further and further away from reality, from being possible each day that goes by. So we'll see what happens there. Pete Alonso, apparently Mets or Blue Jays. Shocker. Blue Jays in on a big name free agent. We'll see what happens there. That's pretty much it. Everybody else coming off the board. I'll end you with this. Lou Whitaker, number retired by the Detroit Tigers. Well overdue. Half of one of the most iconic double play duos in the history of this beautiful sport is back up for the modern era Hall of Fame voting. So what this means is, even though he did not make it in his 10 tries after he retired, similar to how Alan Trammell and how Jack Morris both got in the Hall of Fame, which was through the New Era Committee, he will be on that ballot. He will be joined by, Barry Bonds is probably the biggest name on there, as well as a handful of other guys that people have said, deserve to be in, should have got in when they were on the ballot the first time, etc. But Lou Whitaker is back. He hasn't been on the New Era Committee in a few years because it's not just the same names every year. They mix it up, and it's a new handful of names. But he has been on it before and not gotten in. The last one I remember was 2019. I watched with my two roommates, just assumed he was going to get in. I was like, yeah, duh, there's no way they're this stupid. And then he was like not even close. He got like 3 votes and you needed like 7 or 8 to get in. So we will see what happens. That is a year away. And the reason I bring this up now, because this is not till 2026 that this is going to happen, apply pressure, okay? We have seen with so many players, honestly, like Wagner's a great example. Absolutely. Billy Wagner deserved to be in the Hall of Fame. One of the best relievers of all time. Barely got like 10% of the vote his first time on the ballot. And then social media and the baseball fans around the world just kept getting super loud every year about how much he deserved it. And eventually, on his 10th try, they let him in. Larry Walker, another fantastic call. He almost got dropped off the ballot after his first year because he got such few amount of votes. Then he made it in the Hall of Fame, right? So, like, I'm not saying that if you're just super loud and annoying about it, that like he's definitely going to get in, but it certainly helps. Create an uproar, be loud. I genuinely believe this is one of the biggest failures in sport, not just baseball. One of the biggest atrocities and one of the biggest wrongs in sports is Lou Whitaker not being in Cooperstown. I think it's an absolute joke. So let's be loud and annoying about it. 2026. Let's get Sweet Lou in the Hall of Fame. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We will, of course, be back on Monday recapping the weekend and taking a look at 2025. I'll catch y'all then, baby. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. Go Tigers.